This episode is brought to you by Vital Farms. Isn't it bullshit to have to question where your food comes from? At Vital Farms, you can trace your pasture-raised eggs all the way back to the source, the pasture. On the side of each pasture-raised carton of eggs, you'll find the name of the farm where your eggs were laid. And when you look the farm up on their website, you'll get a peek at all the sunshine, fresh air, and open space the hens enjoy. Learn more and find out where to buy them at vitalfarms.com. Vital Farms, keeping it bullshit-free.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
This episode is brought to you by Klaviyo, the platform that powers smarter digital relationships. With Klaviyo, you can activate all your customer data in real time, connect seamlessly with your customers across all channels, guide your marketing strategy with AI-powered insights, recommendations, and automated assistance, deliver experiences that feel individually designed at scale, and grow your business faster. Power smarter digital relationships with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com/Spotify. That's KLAVIYO.com/Spotify.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Welcome to the podcast. In this podcast episode, I talk with Alfred Ishak about the causes, consequences, and solutions for burnout in the workplace. Alfred Ishak, welcome to the conversation today.
Wow, thank you. Really great to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the Detroit area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be discussing the causes, consequences, and solutions for burnout in the workplace. I think we've all felt it during the pandemic in particular. I think it was very challenging. I don't know about you, Alfred, but I was, me and my wife are both, working full time. We have 6 children. We were trying to do like the homeschool stuff while everything was on lockdown, mixed with our own jobs. And it was just a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
It was, so burnout can happen anytime. I think for people who may not have experienced it too much previously, I'm sure most people experienced it to some extent during the pandemic. And now the new reality is, how do we balance all the competing priorities and interests of employees, and how do we help create a healthy workplace environment where they can do their best work? As we get started, I wanted to share Alfred's bio with everybody. Alfred Ishak is Vice President of People Strategy at Human 8, with more than 15 years of experience in consumer insights, market research, analytics, and he brings a unique blend of authentic leadership, customer-centric strategy, and a disruptive growth mindset to drive organizational change and operational results. Now, I could say a lot more about your background, Alfred, but I'm going to pause there. Anything else you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we get started?
No, that was great. I guess I would just add that the organization I work for, Human 8, we're a global consultancy. So we're a professional services organization, which I think adds some interesting context to this conversation, because we're talking about employee burnout. We're talking about kind of when employees are feeling like overly stressed and depleted of energy at work. And we do have to put that in the context of the type of work that we do. We're not saving lives. We're not ER doctors. Our work is important, but it needs to be addressed with the right type of perspective. So I just want to make sure people know the kind of industry I'm coming from.
Very good. And, we've already introduced the topic of burnout just a little bit. Again, I think we all have experienced that to some extent. Why do you think the prevalence of burnout is rising so much recently?
Yeah. Well, you brought up the pandemic, and I hope at some point soon we can stop talking about the pandemic as a cause for a lot of this stuff. But it really did bring some things to light. We had a lot of people who are parents who were dealing with not only keeping their kids home from school and working with their education, but now dealing with the effects of those kids that weren't in the right social settings for a long time. We're inundated by cultural stressors. They feel more abundant these days, or at least are more apparent, since they're so in our face through social media and other platforms. And then you have the current economic conditions. Business conditions are creating tighter and tighter operating margins. So it just seems like the environment is ripe for people to be feeling this type of burnout.
Yeah, I mean, that's consistent with my experience. And like you said, even, challenges, immediate challenges during the pandemic, 3 years later, the challenges we faced with our children, certainly there have been ripple effects ongoing. And so many individuals reconsidered their priorities during the pandemic and identified, what was most important to them and salient to them. And so the rise of remote work or hybrid work, I think, has contributed in interesting ways to this conversation. More employers nowadays, trying to get people to come back to the office. And so people wrestling with, the new autonomy and flexibility they felt, during a remote work phase. Now, trying to rejuggle what that looks like with their family life, with their home life, et cetera. All of that layered on top of the social strife, the political strife, the economic strife, like everything. I certainly feel like it's more prevalent today than it was, even 5 years ago. Just the daily grind of just like waking up to all the crazy news that's happening, and all of that. We can't just divorce that. We can't just say show up to work as a professional and like leave all that behind. That's not how people work.
Exactly.
It all bleeds together, and so there really are just those ongoing impacts. Where it's this cumulative effect, I think, of all these things being layered on top of each other that just makes it really hard. You also mentioned the squeeze, because margins are tight, because we're in a hyper competitive marketplace, because of the labor market and the shifting nature of the workforce, and the nature of work itself. All of this just adds to that squeeze. And frankly, most humans aren't super thrilled with change and aren't super thrilled with constantly having to renegotiate their jobs and all of those sorts of things. All of this just adds to the complexity of this situation.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. It is this constant push and pull of the demands or the perceived demands of our workplace and our jobs versus the capacity that we have to address those demands. And that capacity is affected by all of these things that we're talking about, not only factors at work. So it's really important that we have these types of conversations, and organizational leaders are recognizing that this is an issue with really far-reaching impact.
And again, I think all of us experience this to some extent, but some more severely than others. What are some of those symptoms or the signs that we should be on the lookout for as organizational leaders to see people who are really, at the threshold, like, the straw is almost going to break the back, and these are people we really need to help and support?
Yeah, great question. I think there are people with high emotional IQ that can feel when somebody is suffering in one way or another. But for those of us that might not have that type of sensing capability, there are generally 4 categories of signs of burnout. One is exhaustion or energy depletion. So think constant fatigue or lack of concentration that you might see in employees. So that's one thing to really look out for. Another is a detachment to one's work, like a loss of enjoyment, a perceived lack of motivation. That's a big one as well. A third sign, and again, it gets to how far-reaching some of this impact is just ineffectiveness. So low productivity, kind of a apathetic posture to work, lowered performance. So that's something that's really prevalent. And then just general negativity. So negative attitudes about the work, negative attitudes about the workplace or your coworkers. Those are all things to look out for.
I think we all have that to an extent, like from time to time. And I was just joking, in the pre-interview, it's a Monday morning, I'm dragging myself out of bed, it's dark and blah, 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 right? Like everyone experiences a lack of motivation or exhaustion or those sorts of things from time to time. But what we're really trying to hone in on here is people who are experiencing that in a kind of a disproportionate way, particularly those who were previously engaged, high performers, exactly. People that were doing great work. And all of a sudden you just see this kind of tapering off and decline. And you have to ask yourself why. Now, in a lot of high stress kind of environments, workplace environments where you're focused on the results, it can be really easy to just say, well, you're not performing anymore and kind of cut them loose or whatever, and just chalk it up to bad performance. But I don't think from a human perspective, I don't think that's a good approach anyways, but even setting that aside, just from a pragmatic perspective in the workplace, I don't think we have the labor market to support that kind of an approach. We just don't have enough skilled people to do the work that needs to be done. And so we can't afford to lose previously really great performers who now, for whatever reason, are just kind of, it's declining. And burnout is one of those huge pieces. Now, I've felt it too. I'm an academic. I'm a professor, and fortunately, in the academic world, we have something called sabbaticals, and every 6 years, you get this opportunity to apply. Not everyone takes it, and not everyone gets the opportunity, but everyone can at least apply for it. And man, my goodness, I'm one of those. I think I have a hard time saying no. I'm a high performer, and so people ask me to join all sorts of projects and groups and committees, in addition to my teaching and my research and the consulting work I do on the side. And so over time, I just start to feel more burnout, and all of those symptoms that you said, I 100% experienced. And the nice thing is I have an outlet. So, 5 years goes by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this in another minute. I'm starting to feel it. Well, guess what? I can apply for a sabbatical. I can take 6 months off and kind of regroup and recontextualize and just, have the ease. Most people don't have that kind of a situation. And so you start to feel this burnout. And for a lot of people, it's either you just kind of put your head down and try to plow through it, or your performance declines enough that you end up getting booted from your job, and then you're out on the market. It's not a great situation for anybody in that kind of a context. So what do you see as some of the primary ways leaders can step in once they've acknowledged this, once they see these symptoms, the signs? How can we step in and try to reconcile this with our team, so that we can help those great performers become great performers again, so we can help provide the support that they need?
Yeah, no, that's great. And you're right. It's really incumbent on leaders to take our responsibility in this issue. This is not wholly an employee issue, right? There are likely conditions set up in the workplace that are making it such that people are falling into this realm of burnout. But so I think at an organizational level, the first thing that leaders need to do is recognize this is a real thing. It's not a trend. It's not a generational thing. It is a real cultural issue that is impacting our employees and impacting our business. And large issues like that take real systemic and cultural change. So that's the first thing, is getting the attention that it needs and getting the resources that it needs.
Can I jump in for just a second? Maybe it's worth taking just a few minutes. You mentioned how a leader's role in burnout is at first to acknowledge the diverse kind of causes of the burnout, and it can be systemic issues, policies, practices, procedures that contribute to it, the culture overall. let's hone in a little bit on just those root causes for a second.
Sure.
Because again, we often talk about this as an employee issue. And, it is to an extent, right? Obviously, and I think of my own experience when I'm experiencing burnout, like I need to take responsibility for like overextending myself and like doing those sorts of things. But there's a reason why I overextend myself, and there's a reason why I do the things that then lead to burnout. So what are some of the most common root causes that you see?
Yeah. And that's exactly right. If we get back to that idea that it is this kind of equation, right? There's this imbalance that's existing between the demands on a person and that person's capacity to respond to those demands. If you think of that demand side, there's so much that can go wrong and often goes wrong. Think unrealistic workloads. This is really common in American corporate culture right now, that it's almost, the organization has a set of responsibilities and a set of goals and objectives, and key people are often tasked with so much of it that it becomes very unreasonable at times and very daunting for people at times. That coupled with timelines and deadlines that might be unreasonable. So that's one key thing, is workloads and timelines. Also, something that I notice is really prevalent is just a lack of clarity on expectations, a lack of clarity on roles. So people often are performing with really incomplete information on what's expected of them, what it looks like to be successful, who else has responsibilities in the same realm. So just lack of clarity. And along with that's poor communication. Often you have leaders setting visions, and then there's maybe a second layer that is supposed to maybe take that vision and put it into more operational plans. And a lot gets lost along the way. And then before you know it, the people on the front lines who are actually responsible for doing the work and carrying forward these plans really don't have the context they need, don't have the why that they need. So I think those are all things that at an organizational level, we can do better at. Like, leaders can role model the right types of behaviors and the right types of expectations, and hold people accountable for when they see things go off track. So those are some things that come to mind right away.
Yeah. And again, this is a bit unique, but in a university setting,
Sure.
I can speak to my own experience. I'm kind of known as a bit of a workhorse. I'm a doer. I get stuff done. I've been seen as a high performer on campus. I enjoy what I do. My why is clear. Like, I have all those things in place. What really gets me is when I see inconsistencies in how administration or the executive leadership handles different situations. And when I'm trying to, fulfill the kind of the mission, the roles that I've been given, and feeling like the kind of this insane, inconsistent bureaucracy is hindering me. So I'm not being supported. In fact, it's like I'm sitting in the deep end of the pool, treading water, and then people are like piling weights on top of my head, right? Or like I'm pounding my head against a brick wall repeatedly, trying to get something done. And for me, that's where it really starts to hit in. Like, and then as you talked about, like the negativity, it's really easy to start to succumb to the negative thought patterns. And most people aren't waking up in the morning thinking, how am I going to make John's life difficult today?
Yeah.
Like, that's not something that happens. And, they're just doing the best they can in their work. Yet, this environment is contributing to just the frustration and the sense of not being able to accomplish what I've been tasked to accomplish, et cetera. And I think that's a big contributor to the burnout, I know, at least that I've felt in the past.
For sure. I mean, not having the right support around you, facing any type of toxicity in the workplace, that's all going to just add and compound. And that's why we're in the situation we're in right now, is because all of these things connect to one another. And you're right, John, like, nobody is trying, I mean, for the most part, I hope nobody's trying to make anybody's life uniquely more difficult. But in this complex system that we've created in our workplaces, so much can go wrong, and it does lend itself to all of these factors, just creating not the greatest work environment for some.
Yeah. So leaders taking responsibility, understanding their role in connection with the role of the individual employee. Now, what can we really do to address this, prevent it ideally, but be proactive about responding to it when we start to see the signs within our teams and within our the people in our teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one thing is setting an inspiring vision that employees can connect with. There's so much research that I'm sure you're very well aware of that points to, if there is no connection between an employee's individual purpose and that the purpose of their company, the purpose of their organization, things can get off track really easily. So it is really incumbent on leaders, create something inspiring, create something that people can connect with, because that will at least lend itself to motivation to kind of carry that charge to meet these collective goals with an organization. So once you have that, then it's really about creating a supportive and open work environment that's underpinned by both psychological safety. So people feel like there's real openness to taking care of one another, to doing the things that create the right conditions around each other, but also that's underpinned by accountability. When people don't behave the way that you would hope, when leaders aren't setting the right examples or creating unrealistic expectations, they really need to be held accountable. And you mentioned that, that lack of consistency in what we expect from one another and what we hold each other to is really a problem. So psychological safety and accountability, and divert resources to wellness programs. This is not just an HR issue, but your HR departments, your wellness people, they're the people that can get in the resources for better mental and emotional wellness programs. So making sure that you are diverting those resources to where we need it.
Well, I note the time. I'm going to have to let you go here in just a few minutes. This has just been a great conversation. But as we start to wrap things up, I'm wondering if there's any additional insights or perhaps personal experiences you would like to share in relation to this burnout.
Yeah, I think the point I'd like to leave on is what somebody can do if they themselves are feeling burnt out, if they feel like these types of feelings creep in. Number one, acknowledge it. It's okay. It's natural. All of us, like you said, John, have experienced these types of things. There's ebbs and flows in everybody's lives, and there's times where you just aren't feeling your best. You're not performing your best, and it's okay. So acknowledge it. That's the number one thing to do, and then take control of the things that you are clearly in control of. Like, take care of yourself, prioritize sleep, exercise, try mindfulness activities, take that time off that you deserve and that you've earned, and really disconnect with it. So do those things to take care of yourself. And then at the same time, advocate for the right conditions to be created around you. So seek the support of managers and mentors, in making sure you have the right resources, you have the right conditions around you. Align yourself with those things that give you energy. There's a reason you're at the job that you're at, most likely. There's something that made you happy about it at some point. Pour your energy into those things. Find efficiencies in the things that deplete you of energy, or maybe even find a way to delegate them. Oftentimes we don't have to be doing everything that we think we need to be doing. So really dissect that. And then if it does not get better and you don't see the signs of improvement, like, evaluate your options at your current employer, because a lot of organizations have cross-functional opportunities for people that can really change the dynamics of their working. But also maybe the answer is beyond your current employer. But mainly do the things that you need to do to make you the best version of yourself, because that way you'll be the best employee, you'll be the best parent and partner and friend. So I would just say, take care of yourself.
Yeah, well said. Take care of yourself, prioritize your own physical and mental wellness. Hopefully leaders are modeling this and encouraging members of their team to do this. I think all of that is very well said. Alfred, it's been a real pleasure. As we wrap things up, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, if you have any final word.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I would love to hear from people. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Again, my name's Alfred Ishak. Ishak is spelled Ishak. This is a really important issue to me. I do work in people strategy, but I'm also, working for this consulting firm where we're dealing with global Fortune 500 companies and helping them solve their organizational issues as well as more commercial or customer-facing issues. And you just can see the prevalence of this taking place in our society. So we need to help each other, lean on each other. So I'm happy to play my little part and would love to hear from people and learn from people as well.
Thank you, Alfred. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Alfred and his team at Humanate can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe. They can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.